Texas Pecan Gourmet Coffee. Sleek new design, same bold flavor. Fill your cup with the flavor of pecan and cocoa. The only gourmet coffee you'll ever need. Handcrafted, slow roasted, perfection. Our coffee provides a comforting experience for any time of day. Start with Texas Pecan and savor the heartland in each brew. Get yours now at monkeywerx.com.
All right. Hey, welcome, folks. This is going to be your SITREP. It's 9/4/2025. Coming to you live here from the Monkey Lounge in the great state of Texas. And so I'd like to welcome all the new monkeys that are tuning in. I'm telling you, the skies tell stories, and we can track a lot of what's going on around the world just by watching the skies. And so we're going to get into all of that. We're going to talk about the brace for turbulence, because I do believe there are some definitely uncertain times on the near horizon. And then, of course, I'd like to welcome, the White House and intelligence community, because we know you guys are watching. So welcome. And so let's get into the deets. We're going to look at what's going on out there from the news perspective. We're going to look at the skies, as always, from the military perspective. And we got a few shiny spots, and we got a lot of turds we're trying to polish too. So let's just get into it, because this is where, the rubber meets the road. And so we jump on over, and you guys are going to see the current sky count up in terms of military aircraft. We're sitting at around 260, just under 260. I've stripped out, as always, a sea of trainers, because it's some beautiful flying weather. And remember, they got to get these hours in before you hit the new fiscal year coming up at the end of the month. And so, all right. So the yellow circles, if you want to know what those are, most of that, what you see on screen, are going to be your intel balloons. All right. That's the eyes in the skies, high altitude, right? So these guys are flying up around anywhere from 60 to 90,000 feet, well above commercial traffic, but they're tracking anything and everything. Now, mind you, I've got almost 60 of these I track. Most of the time they go dark, and a lot of them go dark around the time I start to broadcast. So that's okay. We know you're watching. It's all good. You're trying to catch the bad guys. We get it. But you take that type of power and you put it in the hands of the wrong people, and you're no longer catching bad guys. You're catching good guys, because we're a threat. And so, all right, so let's take a look at the 60s. We'll start out the interesting piece. Now, I don't ever drill down on the 60s, because there could be some activity going on tied to helping rehome some illegals. And I have mad respect for the ICE community, and I don't want to dox them. So you can see pretty busy northeast-wise. Down here in the Panhandle, a lot of training stuff going on. So we've got about 33, so it's a little light. We've hit it upwards of 100 plus in recent days. So good on them. Let's move on. Let's get into the air refuelers, because remember, these are the things that are keeping the fighters up, and the bombers for that matter, because those are the two platforms that really use this quite a bit. You'll see sitting at around 24. It's a little bit below our baseline of 25, but that's just the KC-135s. Let me drop in the 767 Pegasus. If I can see them, here we are, 14 of those, but that adds to our screen 37. So if the math's not mathing, that's because we got assets over this area as well, okay? Now, we'll go into a little more detail with respect to the air refuelers. I'll show you the traces over the last 5 days. Since we got it up, it's a good segue. We take this on over. Now, the main thing, what we're looking at are transitions, right? You see the marshalling patterns, little tight circles, right? That's your fighters coming in, getting gas and go, right? We're looking down. I see a little bit of activity down in Colombia, right? Which looks like a marshalling pattern, which would be an indicator we got some fighter activity around there. You can see one that just dips down south. It goes almost right over Venezuela, and then you can see some activity down there in the Caribbean. So, and out over the Gulf of America, a couple broken traces. So, yeah, it looks like we've got a little overhead coverage. Now, notice these long trace lines coming across the Atlantic. That's usually transitioning something to and from. Okay. The normal stuff you see over Europe, you expect to see that. But look at the thick traces going into the Mediterranean. So that's a pretty good indicator. We put fighters in the region. Now, what's going on over there, we'll get into a little more detail when we get to the back end of the SITREP. But there is some stuff kind of going down in the sandbox that we'll talk to, as well as what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. We've got a lot of moving parts right now. All right, we'll take away that. And let's just go ahead. Let me see. I'm going to look at the 47s real fast just to see if we got anything. Whoa, that's pretty impressive. All right, eastern side of the United States, right, or to the right versus the left. 9 Chinooks. So remember, these are troop carriers, and they move around a lot of equipment as well. So to see 9 of those up, that's a pretty good little number. All right. Okay. Now let me go ahead and we'll start transitioning through, since I know the intel community's got to keep their schedule tight, and so don't want to waste a lot of their time. So let's go ahead and get into what is up. Now, most of this is LaSalle Aviation, a third party company that does a lot of work on our behalf. And you'll just see it's almost like they're casting a fishing net across the United States. My guess is they're using this stuff, little man in the middle circle there over Georgia. But my guess is they're using this stuff to catch the bad guys, right? We got a little transition heading across the drink. But again, most of this is LaSalle. And they're tied in tight with the Army. So you'll see when we get over to Biggs Army Airfield, a lot of the flights come out of there. Now, notice, too, they're looking closely at Moldova, probably over into Crimea. These are side-looking, right? So out here, more than likely. And then maybe from there, they could be looking down towards kind of the Baltics, right? There's a lot going on there as well, a little bit of an uprising. So we'll tune into that stuff in a bit. The usual stuff over Gaza, etc. And then you can see looking very closely at North Korea. Again, this is the last 5 days. Little blip there down under. Right. But again, if you get back over the United States, you can see up the left coast and then out over the mountain ranges. Right. Just casting that net. All right. Now, take a look at the drone activity. Now, I will tell you, they're keeping it pretty tight when it comes to the Caribbean. We know we got some Q1 Predator stuff out there. Not seeing any indication of that, which is good, right? That means these guys are tightening things up, right? You can see looking very closely into Russia along just kind of the borderline there as they run across from Poland all the way north, looking at Belarus, right? High altitudes. This will be Q4 type stuff, which is technology is just banging, right? Low altitude stuff over the Mediterranean, probably looking at ship traffic, etc. And then a little bit right around that Strait of Hormuz. Now, let me pause that for 1 second. I'm going to pop us up over here, hit refresh, and more than likely they've got eyes on what's transitioning in and out around this area. You'll notice there's a lot of staging inside, a lot of staging outside. Red are oil tankers, green are cargo. And this right here has been, you're talking since mid-June has been stacking up like this. I think the estimate was like 1 million gallons of oil afloat right now. So this stuff is definitely, I would venture to guess, empty, all right? Because it needs to come in and pick up and come out. This stuff is trying to get and come out, all right? So, again, 20% of the world's oil passes through here. All right, moving back over. Let's take a look at the sub-hunters. What are they up to? It's going to be your P-8s and your P-3s, all, again, Navy platforms. You can see it looks like a lot of touch and goes in the southeast. So, taking off out of Jacksonville Naval Air Station, just getting some stick time in. A little bit over the East Coast towards Canaveral, right? Nothing out over the Caribbean. Again, man, Navy keeps it tight. These guys are really doing a good job at not letting people see what they're doing. And you want that, honestly, folks. All right, look, up the Mediterranean, a little bit of kicking the tires, a little bit north there of Scotland. But the rationale behind that and the reason you don't want it, right? Remember, everything that I show is open source. I'm taking stuff that is out there available, and I can look at it and come up with an analysis. And there are people that are a lot smarter than me on this that can read because they've got that background even heavier. Now, I'm an Air Force guy, right? But you get dudes that that know all the platforms that are watching this, and I don't mean U.S. assets. I'm talking about our enemies, okay? They get eyes on this too, and they can read exactly what's going on, just like I can, right? I'm reading the room, and so open source. So the more that we tighten things up, the less that I can see, the harder it is for an enemy to see it. So it's an important data point because, you know, I get people that talk to me and go, man, how are you getting all this information? Look, this is just, you go out, you search, there are apps that give you everything you need to know, from jamming to satellite tracking to aircraft tracking. And I'm telling you, Skyglass, one of the best aircraft trackers you can get on the market because it's three-dimensional. You're not just looking at something top down like this. You kick it up to the side and you can see where things are actually doing touch and goes, what their pattern is. And you can really, if you know the platform and understand the capability, you can tell where they're looking and what they're doing. All right, back off my soapbox. Let's get over here to the R-135s. Again, signal intelligence. And you'll note, you know, flying off of and out of Okinawa towards Japan, right? So they're listening for things, everything from radar signatures to telephone conversations, right? A little bit there over the North Sea, headed up towards Norway. Little blip taking off. Looks like maybe some quick calibration traffic there, and then down to South Florida, maybe pre-positioning to go out and do some flights out over the Caribbean if I was a betting man. Same thing here. Look at the E6 TACAMOs. What does this tell you, right? These are talking to you, the nukes on your subs. So you see a broken trace that heads from the East Coast. Then you got this one that pops out over the Gulf of America. So if I'm an enemy, what does that tell me? It tells me, hey, we got submarines out there, all right? That's all the reason that thing would be doing that. So you can watch them very closely and get a good read. And again, AWACS, right? So you go from talking to nukes to looking for nukes. But these aircraft do a lot of different things. If you know their capabilities, they're talking to air traffic control. They're air traffic control in the sky, right? But they also do man in the middle, so they can look at cell data. And then they're looking for nukes. But when you see the round circles that I'm pointing out here, the little tight circle, that's when they're in listening mode, right? They become that cell tower in the sky. And just note the locations. You pop that one right over Constanta. You're listening out over Moldova, out over the Black Sea. And then look at this one. That's probably a NATO bird. And see all the man in the middle circles, right? And you can see this little catch. They fly out over the Med, right? Nothing there over the Middle East. Nothing down under. So, all right. Now, let's go ahead and start to peel back a little further. Let me show you the C-17 traffic over the last 5 days. And this, again, tells a story because these guys are going to be delivering logistics. They could take troops, right? USVI headed down to that area, probably supporting operations down in the Caribbean. You can see a couple flights down into Central America. Just happens to be very close to the areas that Global X goes, right? As we exfil people. Big transitions. Again, 5 days. Look at the amount, the volume going across the drink, right? So we heard all of this peace talk that we were going to table some things when it came to, Ukraine and Russia, but it's gone opposite direction. Everybody it gets heated up. Look at just straight up. Let me hit pause for a second. Look at the straight up volume going into the Middle East, and then look at how much and how thick these trace lines are, right? Going into Ramstein, across Europe, right? Down into the Middle East. Now, again, I'll talk to that when we get further in because I do have a lot of stuff to cover when it comes to Russia, Ukraine. We got a lot of stuff to talk about when it comes to the Middle East, right? Because I think there's definitely a read on what I believe is happening and what we're staging for. So continue on with that. But you can see very heavy volume, 5 days, right, into some pretty critical areas. You know, you've got Bahrain. You can see him positioning into Qatar, right? All right. So let's get into the news, and I'll show you what's happening out there. Now, first and foremost, we look at the Don's schedule, all right? And it's kind of light today for Thursday. Looks like he's got a little hosting a dinner out in the Rose Garden about 7:30 this evening. But you had yesterday, you had the president of Poland coming in. Remember, that's the tripwire, was the tripwire in World War II, right? As history repeats itself. So we start getting into, polishing the turds, as I said. This is ADP data, all right, showing the jobs. Now, mind you, it should be, I think it should be around 125,000 or so to show a good, robust economy. Things are pumping. When you start seeing it down here at this level, at 54,000, it's a pretty good indicator. Stuff is really chugging, okay? Now, remember, the previous administration came back and did a downward revision over the last 12 months, and they removed like 860,000 jobs. So this isn't something that is just new to happen. This is basically the data that's being reported. Now, remember, the Fed comes out. They'll have their number. The projection for this was, they said about 74,000. Then I heard 64,000. It came in at 54, which means this is payroll, all right? That's what we're looking at here. It means that's not good. It means the economy is very, very sluggish. Now, this is the chief economist over at the ADP, and Dr. Nella Richardson. She says the year started with strong job growth, right? Did it? We'll see. But the momentum has been whipsawed by uncertainty, right? And so a variety of things could explain the hiring slowdown, including labor shortages, skittish consumers, yeah, I'd say that, and AI disruptions. Now, this piece right here, I just did, we were just talking about a Monkey Minute over coming up on the weekend over on Patreon. Just the fact that AI is projected to tank the job market in like the next 18 months. So, and they're talking like white collar jobs, so like banking and finance, et cetera, because they don't need the bodies to do it when AI can supposedly do it all. So eyes on that one, because if the jobs look pretty bad right now, we go 18 months out, according to what all the experts are saying, AI is going to have some pretty big impacts. Okay. All right. The other things too that are slowing it down, you got things like, tariffs. Tariffs is a big unknown. It's popping. This isn't just the U.S. economy that is really struggling. You get into the EU, they've got a lot of issues. We know Russia's got major issues, especially with all the sanctions. And then, of course, you can get into India being impacted by the tariffs, and China absolutely impacted by the tariffs. So there's a lot on the horizon that could indicate that we got a lot of turbulence coming in the next year. All right. All right. Now, listen, I'm just going to tell you, I've heard Trump say several times that this is a Democrat issue. I am not a Democrat, and I voted for you not once, not twice, but 3 times. This right here is important to the community. We want to see accountability. Now, is it plausible that we may be just getting ahead of you, that you've got a critical path, you know how you're going to take this down? We watch what's happening north of Caracas. We watch what's starting to take shape in D.C. We're kind of reading the room a little bit, and we see some shiny spots that maybe there's some accountability on the near horizon that's coming. And so that may be why, it's important we don't get out in front of you. I get that. This, again, you get the Oversight Committee. This is over on Breitbart, by the way. Oversight Committee releases DOJ Epstein files. Most already seen before. When they say most, yeah, listen, folks, 97% of what was out there was stuff we'd already seen. And almost all of it's redacted. Okay. Now, let me take you over, because we're going to segue into a little bit on this, because I think it's important to understand that 3% that did come out and what it actually tells us. All right. So I'm going to take you over to this piece. First and foremost, you're going to hear me talk about this. This is the data that was really kind of pushed out. It surfaced because there were a lot of FOIA requests that went in asking for information around this. Now, of course, it's going to show up redacted just like this, all the black stuff. The only name you see on there is actually Epstein himself. But if you start to go and pour through all of this, let me just give you the summary, all right, of what it is we're actually talking about here. It's important because this is the new nuggets. Again, it's all redacted. But let me take you over here, all right? Now, the first part, just to go through it, when you talk about the redacted stuff, this is Custom Border Protection, Homeland Security material on the Caribbean link side, all right? Because this is where they were actually tracking and logging and capturing this. So the document types redacted are customs, as I just mentioned, Border Patrol. And the reason I say Border Patrol, Border Protection, Homeland Security logs, okay? The reason that they surfaced is because FOIA, right? Freedom of Information Act requests. So after Epstein was suicided, all right, there was a bunch of people that were looking for more information to try to tie all this stuff together and figure out exactly how did we get to where we are today. So key detail here is that even years after Epstein's reported death in 2019, certain entries regarding the Caribbean flight operations, manifest, and associated individuals were heavily redacted and marked as if still active. All right. So let's go to the next piece. That suggests that U.S. agencies continue to treat some aspects of Epstein's network, the flight records, the linked individuals, the traffic corridors in the Caribbean, which is what we've been talking about, as open investigations. It reinforces the theory that Epstein's logistical network, planes, yachts, shell companies, etc., remain under scrutiny and possibly still operational post-2019. That is the key nugget that they don't really tell you, okay? So you have to kind of read between it. Now, I'm going to hit this. I'm going to hit pause because I want to get it to the right one because we're going to go through this and talk about what these new 3% files contain, all right? So what it gives you are key airport codes and Epstein's flight logs, all right? So you got Caribbean hubs, things like you see St. Thomas is in there, Puerto Rico's in there, the Dutch Caribbean, right? St. Martin, Nassau, the Bahamas are in there, Antigua, Barbados, Guadalupe, St. Kitts, right? These are all areas that his little G5 was flying in and out of, right? Or other things too, okay? All right, so let me back up. Take a closer look here. These are interesting because this would indicate that he was absolutely an asset. It still is, as I mentioned. The dude's not dead, all right? But look at where he's headed. You see that Opalaka, all right? Yeah, not going to touch on that one, but let me just tell you that's a red flag for me right there. The fact that he was going back and forth to that location. Palm Beach, yeah, you know, he kind of lived around in that general area. So you can see Palm Beach, Miami International, you know. And then, of course, you've got him headed in and out of Lauderdale and Hollywood. Now, I've talked about a couple of these locations in the past. I'm not going to go into them right now because that's where I get a lot of heat, all right? All right, now look at the other piece. These were also routes that were noted in the logs, right? London Heathrow. Well, what's he doing going to England? Could there be a prince over there that we've been talking about? Paris, right? Headed into France. All right, private jet hub. Okay, that's a little one where you want to get in under radar. And then, of course, into Portugal. Okay, so if we summarize all of that, back it up one more, there's a pattern here that emerges, right? You've got Epstein's Caribbean flights that are centered in the USVI in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Then you've got St. Martin and Nassau were frequent jump points for international connections. And from there, flights often linked back to U.S. bases in Palm Beach and Opalaka. So read between the lines on that, okay? All right. Let me take us on over here. So yes, Mr. President, this is important to us. And again, we may just be getting ahead of you, right? By demanding that we get some answers here and people are held accountable. There is a level of frustration, and we understand it takes a right sequence. There is a critical path, and if we get ahead of you and you start releasing stuff, people are going to start scattering like rats and cockroaches that they are. So understood, all right? Loud and clear. But this right here, this will impact your midterms 1,000,000%, because if people don't start seeing results here pretty soon, people are going to start losing faith. Okay. Now, the next piece to this is imagine, right? And just imagine if we're right and that this pops down south in Caracas and then this guy turns up alive, not dead. Imagine the bounce that goes for the rest of Trump's term. Okay. That'd be like turning up Osama bin Laden after he's been supposedly killed for a long time, right? All of a sudden, wait, how does a dead man all of a sudden resurface? Then all of a sudden you uncover the networks that were below it. So yeah, that'd be pretty big, okay? It'd get people pretty dang excited to turn this guy up when, we know. Come on. All right, let's move on. Now, you start talking about the swamp. You start talking about some of the things and the reason why there needs to be a major takedown. This right here is blatantly obvious. And how do you even answer for this? There is not a civilian in the world out there that is a non-government employee that gets this type of bounce unless they have a company and they sell it for billions of dollars, right? I mean, it's just straight up a net worth that is insane, okay? But look at Miss Omar's income. She went from $51,000 a year to $30 million in 12 months, folks. 12 months. That is why we got to drain the swamp, because the corruption is absolutely insane and nobody makes that kind of money. I mean, other than our politicians. So, yeah, do you need to drain the swamp? 100%. This right here is just one more piece. But here's the thing. If you don't do it, you don't get the network that's been blackmailing all of these people, right? And you drain it, you're going to refill it because they're going to continue to blackmail people, right? So it has to be sequenced just right. All right, let's get over here to what's going on from a NOTAM perspective. That's Notice to Airmen. These are TFRs, temporary flight restrictions. And you'll notice everything looks pretty much the same as it has. All right. You get over DC, there's a lot of TFRs inside TFRs. All right. Everything from, areas that are covered over, and a lot of this is unmanned stuff. Okay. Over places like Camp David, et cetera. And then around DC, you got quite a bit also. Some of this, like this one, for example, that's tied to football stadiums. We've got NFL coming this weekend. Actually, tonight, I think the Cowboys get beat by the Eagles. And this is, stuff that we see. It's pretty consistent. All these little tiny dots here, football stadiums, et cetera, college stadiums, right? So now I back up a little bit. You can see there's a pretty big box out over Iceland. They've got some high-speed flyers, low-altitude stuff going on out here. And in fact, if you get into the flight levels, you can see 5,000 up to 10,000, right? And so they're expecting to see military aircraft up to 450 knots below 10,000. So yeah, I've got some moving and scooting out there. And then you can just see the rest of Europe, et cetera. This is usually a missile box related, given the long length there. So some type of, says a danger tempo exercise scheduled. But note the flight level is 610, so surface to 61,000 feet. So yeah, it's probably going to be some missiles. All right. Okay, moving on. And I will tell you, we're going to go over the 30 minutes because we're at 30 minutes right now, all right? But I'm going to try to speed through this, so bear with me. All right, Maduro says U.S. warships, up to 8 now, by the way, all right, with 1,200 missiles targeting Venezuela. I don't know. You got to kind of read down a little lower level than that. But he's not wrong. All right. But Maduro is not a good dude. Okay. And we know that he's got, a pretty strong military that is supporting the cartels. And that's why they're so successful. And they're supporting all of the drug running and drug trafficking out there. All right. So, head of the snake, maybe. All right, look at this. U.S. military strikes Venezuelan drug vessels. So I told you, we're not down there to invade Venezuela. You can tell just by the ship set that's out there. And, this is going to be heavily focused on the Dragon's Den, okay? But look at this. It says here that we took out right after I did my SITREP, drug vessel in Caribbean, 11 killed in Trump-ordered operation. And you get down, I'll just hit play a little, and you can see this thing get smoked. Now, you hear some of the mainstream media, they talk about the fact that these guys were, they don't even know they're being watched. Boom. Yeah, take down. That will do it. Now, I heard the mainstream say, oh, well, this boat was coming to the United States. Not quite, folks. Listen, the distance between Venezuela and even Cuba is pretty far. You're not going to get there with a little 4-engine boat like this, okay? But what you can do is run it in through the networks that are out there, and it eventually migrates. Yeah, that's a possibility. But it just goes to show you they throw things out there. They don't know what they're talking about, okay? So nonetheless, good to see it. Looks like somebody got smoked. Let's move on. All right. Pentagon chief suggests more operations against the cartels coming. I would say yes. That is probably a pretty doggone hard fact. All right. We are just starting to see this break loose, and it's going to get probably pretty sideways. All right. So pay attention to that, because, again, you got to get the baseline stuff done before you start hitting the higher people. Okay. So, all right. U.S. amphibious landing exercise underway in Puerto Rico as tensions mount. So, yeah, this is going to be your Marines. Now, this amphibious unit that is out there, I think they have about 2,200 deep, and they're going to be practicing this kind of thing. But look, you're not going to run in like D-Day into Venezuela with this and start taking the country. That's not how this is designed. Now, what you can do is run into some areas around Caracas and take down the cartels and the human trafficking operations and the drug trafficking operations. So just kind of read between the lines on that one, right? But yeah, you got to practice. All right. Okay. Now, this, I'll go back to the intelligence flights that we talked about. They're operating out of Biggs Army Airfield, and you can see just where they're headed. They come in, all right, they fly out, they do some stuff, gather some intel, they come back. But this is their home base operations for the most part out of Biggs Army Airfield. Okay, U.S. Transportation Command. Let's just see where they're going. We back this up a little bit. You can see a little Middle East traffic there. You got some stuff coming out of Europe. All right, looks like some stuff headed down towards that one. I don't know where that's headed, but that is Terceira Island. Could be a fuel stop. All right. There's actually a prison out here as well that we've shown from time to time. So it could be very possible that they're putting some people out there as well. I don't think the camber flights would be involved in that, but it's a fuel stop as they go across to drink. All right. Then the Brits, you can see coming out of what looks to be Norway, headed back to home base operations, and then this one down in Nairobi. So a little bit of flex down here into Africa. All right, Ramstein over into Germany. Just take a look at the arrival board, C-17s. Another camber flight 747 coming in, so that could be carrying either troops or some heavy equipment. And then this one here out of Cairo, right? And then you can see this one, 747 is coming back to Fort Dix. And then Reach C-17 looks to be headed northbound towards the UK. And then this one here, you've got the Terceira Island again. Fuel stop, more than likely. But look, you've got some 747s between Coletta and Atlas Air rolling in and out. Right, departures. That one's headed to Kuwait. This one's destination unknown. Okay, here's your Bohica moment. If you're not familiar with that acronym, it means bend over. Here it comes again. This one here is another one of those turds that are being polished. Not a good shiny spot. Don't even think being polished is going to be shiny, because people are fed up with our money going to fund this activity. You want to stop the war over there? You stop giving them stuff. You stop funding, okay? What this tells me, the fact that we continue to push in more and more stuff, it tells me that there's something hidden over there that they don't want the Russians taking, okay? You can tell that by the ones that are the loudest. So when you hear Lindsey Graham, who is a major rhino, running his mouth about how important this place is, and all of these other politicians, then you know something stinks to high heaven, okay? So, look, they've just approved $329 million of your tax money for another package of Patriots and Starlink support. Now, this old Elon here, all right? So, nonetheless, this is, we're just sick of it, okay? We're sick of it. Stop spending our tax dollars on this. Right, that's not what we voted for. And let's see. NATO issues new warnings after Russia GPS jamming. Okay, so this piece, this one's a little interesting because of the fact that this has been increasing. So there is some serious jamming happening when it comes to just all around Europe, into the Middle East, etc. Somebody's got some pretty elaborate technology that is allowing them to jam up all the GPS stuff. And so what that means is the equipment on ground isn't working and functioning properly because it's getting jammed. Means you're getting bad readings, but it also means critical systems that are reliant on GPS to be accurate are not accurate, okay? So things like drones, things like aircraft, things like missile systems, right, could impact a lot of things. So this, again, just pay attention because this is all tied to the Russian side of the house. NATO is starting to get really frustrated, right? And then, again, we talk about this sharp rise in jamming in aviation over the Baltic area, okay? So, again, what's around very close to that? It's not just Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, etc. Right down in the heart of all of this is Kaliningrad, which is Russia, right? Kind of that little pocket that we talk about. All right. Not for Russia to decide if West can deploy troops to Ukraine. That's coming from the NATO chief. Now, remember, we said, wait, Trump did what? He talked about us putting our aircraft, our Air Force, and our military in the skies over Ukraine, and then all of a sudden you hear NATO talking about boots on the ground. Boy, that would be a hard sell. Let me tell you, not what you want to hear, okay? That means there's some chatter behind the scenes of not just NATO, but the United States, because they're not saying, the EU, they're saying the West, which is us, folks, right? Yeah, that right there would go over probably like a turd in a punch bowl, okay? All right. Now, I've shown you in the past, in recent past, the stack up going on in the Middle East. And I've said that, hey, listen, this looks to be, just based on what I'm watching fly in, it doesn't look to be a military buildup in terms of, tanks and et cetera. What it looks like is we're setting up a bunch of tent cities for a massive humanitarian effort. Maybe wrong on that, but it absolutely looks like that was what we were up to. Now I'm reading this one. Israel says it's expecting 1 million Gazans to flee with the new offensive that is coming. So if you start moving 1 million people, where are they going to go? All right. So you are going to have some type of humanitarian effort to get them out and move them to locations, because you just can't stack 1 million people in one area, especially if you're a border of that area. So say Egypt, for example, 1 million people start rolling in. That's going to be really bad. So my guess is there is some type of logistics footprint or staging taking shape right now to try to accommodate this while there is a flex. Okay. So take a look. I showed you C-17 traffic, but take a look at Global X. This is important because when you start to talk about people being moved and rehomed, you'll notice Global X is bringing people into the Netherlands, right? Which tells you they're trying to offset some of the influx in some of the areas around the Mediterranean. And then, of course, you can see them coming out of Alexandria, which is a 72-hour holding facility, and sending people back to their homes. But the Global X piece around the Mediterranean is because they're trying to decongest already an overloaded region with immigrants, okay? And so they bring them in the Netherlands, and then they put them on airplanes and send them to other locations. That's what we're seeing, and it's because they're quietly trying to move people around without overwhelming the system, so to speak. All right. Now we talk RZE Poland. This is a forward operating base. Ukraine right here. This is the border, right, for Poland. And you just take a look at the board. I don't see a lot of U.S. assets coming in yet, right? But when you start to see the Patriot side, then you'll probably see some 747s rolling in, because if that just got approved, we're going to be sending some PAC-3s, et cetera, into the region, missile systems that are. PAC-3 is the missile that goes with the Patriot system. All right, Belgian Air Force are rolling in, but that's the only ones that I see. I don't see anything else. Okay, moving on. All right, now this is a little interesting because you've got these guys all getting together. On top of that, you also have the Indian folks in there. They are uniting against the United States, all right? And so Rocket Man, he's a little bit of a loose cannon. We know where we stand pretty much with Putin and this guy as well. But look, they have this real nice glitzy parade that took place. We got to see some new weapon systems that I don't think people knew existed. So a little bit interesting. So there was some takeaway from it. But let's talk about the hot mic that took shape, because this is a little bit not good, really. So look at this. So the Chinese President Xi and Putin basically discussed life-prolonging organ transplants and immortality as they chatted in front of this parade, okay? The comments picked up by the media, state media microphones. That's not good. Says this: these days, 70 years old, that's coming from Xi, all right? As he walked beside Putin and Kim footage, it says here, the translator conveying his remarks to Putin is then heard in Russian, quoting a line from the Tang Dynasty poem. In the past, used to be rare for someone to be older than 70, and these days they say 70 is one, still a child, right? But it says, with the development of biotechnology, human organs can be continuously transplanted. People could get younger as they grow older and may even become immortal. That's according to the translator. Can you believe they actually said this? Predictions are in this century, it may be possible to live to 150. The Bible says you can't do that, but okay. And then it says, I think it was when we were going to this parade that the chairman spoke about this. Modern means both health improvements and medical means, and then even all kinds of surgical ones related to organ replacement. All right. Now that throws some flags for a lot of folks. I can guarantee you that. But, because you hear about all of these things when it comes to, harvesting. All right. Now, just to bounce over, I'm going to show you what's going on with respect to the Balkans. And I think I said Baltic earlier. Balkans is what I was talking about. But notice you got all kinds of stuff happening here. People are starting to rise up. This is unrest, okay? So when people are starting, you can look around the region, right? It tells you this is Serbia, okay? Something is afoot here, folks. Absolutely afoot, right? And you get over to Syria. Just take a look at the Middle East. all the stuff that's happening here on this end. You get down towards the Israeli side, around Damascus, you got lots of stuff popping off. And then you look at all of the Israel piece. Yeah, they may not be fighting against Iran, but look at the stuff popping off to the north and everything that's going on down here in Gaza. I mean, is there anything else to blow up? I mean, the place has pretty much been hit top to bottom. And then you get into Ukraine. Look, this area right here looks just like it looked when this thing kicked off. It hasn't changed. So, yeah, is peace? Man, I don't think so. Going to take a lot to get us there. So, all right, folks, listen, I did go a little bit over, so I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. For those in the live chat, just sit tight. We'll get over here to the Q&A here shortly on Patreon. That's going to do it. You guys be safe. Keep that powder dry. Stay frosty. We'll talk soon. God bless. Monkey out.